Mini episode 354 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.info.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
All right, everybody, back together again. It's Rick Morris and Kyle Ross coming at you, your FDH Lounge dignitaries, for FDH Lounge mini episode number 354. We're breaking down NFL Week 14. We were unable to do anything together last week during the holidays, but we're coming at you with a special bonus edition here today, not hemmed into our usual time restrictions that we have, Kyle. Here we can just kind of let it flow. It's a full NFL slate. A pleasure to be back with you after a great week for both of us. 10-6 for me, 2-1 on my big three, 1-0 on my lock. My picks overall this year, 91, 92, and 9, 16 and 22 and 1 on the big three, 4, 8, and 1 on the lock picks. However, on all of my picks here, I like to do this selectively, 63, 48, and 4 since bottoming out week 5 on the picks across the board. You, Kyle, red hot right now, yes. Almost back to profitability after a 3-0 week. 23, 25, and 2. You had been buried prior to that. You can smell it. You are right there, my friend.
Well, and by the way, on behalf of Bill O'Reilly, a happy holidays to you and yours, too. Rick Morris, thank you very much.
Merry Christmas, Kyle.
Yes, okay, yes. I can't enjoy things anymore. Yeah, we're doing well. We went the previous week. You know, it's been a while since we've talked here on the show. 4-1-1, could have even been 5-1. That's all right. I won't pick any nits. You know, Miami could have been a winner, but we'll count it as a push. We're fair people on this program. And, you know, after really loving the last two cards and doing very well, it's quite disappointing that I return here in person in your humble abode and absolutely loathe this week's NFL card.
It's a tough one.
The lines makers, I don't know if it's a combination of the matchups or if we just really know who these teams are now at this point. Obviously, only 4 weeks to go in the season. And it's interesting, we were talking off air, that we pretty much know the playoff picture. I mean, it's never been more set. This early in the season, I can't remember a time.
Yeah, there's not a lot of drama at this point.
We talked halfway through the year that we knew that using air quotes here, knew 5 playoff teams.
Yeah.
Still the case now. Denver, New England, Cincy, Indy, Kansas City. Cincy and Indy have the big game this week. See who's going to likely get the 3 seed. The 6 seed will be some sort of odious 8-8 team, it looks like. Over on the NFC side, I think really from the time we did that midseason show, the big thing has been Green Bay falling apart because of no Aaron Rodgers. That's opened the door for Detroit to likely take that division.
Yeah.
Carolina's obviously on a roll. They're going to step in, at least be a wild card, possibly a division winner, depending on what happens this week. And then, of course, you have San Francisco and Seattle out west. And in the East, it will likely come down to the Week 17 matchup between Dallas and Philadelphia in Dallas. So we know who these teams are. The lines are very sound this week. There's none that jumped out at me. I got to be honest with you. There's not a lot of games this week that I'd play with your money.
Yeah. Well, that's
there really isn't. I mean, I know you appreciate that. So
yes.
But we'll find. I think there's a few. I think there's a few now that as we've been sitting here talking, that are starting to pique my interest a little bit here. So I'll do my best to make this show entertaining.
All right. Well, that's never an effort for you. You're always able to do that.
Thank you.
The only thing with the NFC West is, and as you and I said off air, that I am almost completely certain that San Francisco is going to hold off Arizona for the wild card, but there's still a chance.
True. They meet the last week of the year.
Yeah.
San Francisco's already beaten Arizona
once.
Look, it's really interesting. Before the year, I told you that I had been reading a lot of the sharp guys in Vegas really liked this Cardinals team, and we kind of scoffed at it, and, you know, we're the ones kind of looking a little foolish now because those people knew what they were talking about. Because Arizona, I mean, who would have guessed it? So and I know we disagree on that game this week against St. Louis. So.
Yeah, we'll have to
spoiler alert.
Yeah, subsequently. We'll get to that. We start with the Thursday game, as always. And as always, you're not really getting the benefit of this in real time. So you always want to check at the FDH Lounge Twitter account. That's at the FDH Lounge. It is Houston at Jacksonville this week. The Texans, for a team on a long losing streak, still are favored in this game, notwithstanding Jacksonville's recent 3-game winning streak. Houston is favored by a field goal up from 2.5 at the open. And I, Kyle Ross, am going to jump on that bandwagon because I just have the feeling here it's time, in the words of an old WWE pay-per-view. It's time. This has gone on long enough for Houston. They made a very good effort last week against New England, almost pulled it off. I don't see Jacksonville going to 4 in a row under any circumstances here. I understand they're at home. I
think it'd be 4 in 5 weeks. There was a loss in there, I think.
Okay, all right. I think you're right, actually. But
it would be 3 in a row, though.
Yeah, that's still way too much momentum for Jacksonville. I'll take the Texans laying the 3 on the road.
You referenced that It's Time pay-per-view from December 1996. I don't know if more people are going to watch this game than watch that pay-per-view or not, to be honest. This is a dog matchup. I don't know about your power rankings. We kind of went over what we had at the top individually and even in the middle. I have these two teams ranked last and second to last in mine. These are the two worst teams, in my opinion.
I have Houston 31 and Jacksonville a sterling 27 at the moment.
And yet you're going to lay points with Houston. Explain yourself, Rick Morris.
Well, again,
it's a dangerous, risky proposition what you're getting into here.
It's never as simple as that, though, because at the moment I'll concede Jacksonville appears to be the better team as far as the eye test goes, but when you look at some of the specifics, as a Cleveland Browns fan, pardon me for not being too impressed that they beat a Brandon Weeden-led Cleveland Browns team last week. So, Houston, that does appear to be a little bit contradictory as far as my power rankings go, but I have these teams all on that intermingled fourth tier. By the way, you can find these, as always, at the FDH Lounge Multimedia Magazine, the FDHLounge.blogspot.com. I think they're close enough in the power rankings again. For Houston, again, and I've noted it earlier this year, I've suffered from this at earlier times in life here, going with the red-black theory at the roulette wheel in the casino, but I'm doubling down one more time on the Texans here.
I liked Houston last week.
So we both had them to cover. That's true.
Yeah, I liked them last week. That was not one of my 3 winners that I gave you to share with the folks, but I did have them personally, and it was a wire-to-wire cover against a New England team that I figured would sleepwalk and pretty much did. Teams on long losing streaks, Ricky, this time of year, shockingly are typically good bets, believe it or not. Let me get the number here for you. Any team, this goes all the way back to 1983, by the way, so I'm sure 1983 I know is one of your favorite years.
Yes.
Yeah, but any team off 7 or more straight losses, covering 65% blind since 83. But here's the little caveat, my friend. Those teams are typically dogs.
Yeah. Who's ever been favored after losing 10 in a row? Isn't that
I would love to see that. Can we get our crack staff working on that, please?
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, Ricky.
Call your office.
Yes. I'll be honest with you. The knee-jerk reaction is to take Houston because they're playing with revenge. Remember, Jacksonville, one of their wins came at the expense of the Texans.
Yes.
Jacksonville's not won a home game yet this year.
Okay.
They have a little more. I'm not a big momentum guy, as we talked before. If I had to play this game, I would take the points with Jacksonville.
Wow.
Okay. I just think right now they're playing better. I have them above. I have Houston ranked dead last.
Okay.
By the way, if Houston loses this game, I think Teddy Bridgewater's going to be their quarterback next year. It looks to me that Houston could be – look, you're a sharp guy. Maybe in the history of you picking things, in the history of life, where does Houston winning the Super Bowl before the year rank for you right now?
It's way down there. But the thing of it is, and I'm going to
no one could – I mean, look, I had them winning the division and making some noise in the playoffs myself. Right. No one could have foreseen this.
Exactly, which is why I'm not, super embarrassed by it, because – I was more wrong than most people, but they were the unanimous choice of everybody to at least win the division, make it into the playoffs. So the fact that I was a little bit more wrong than most people isn't all that bad. But again, I don't want to sound like stubborn guy that can't let go, but their defense isn't horrible. So much of their problem this year has related, we talked about
the turnovers,
turnovers and the quarterback position. The quarterback position, and again, I don't want to sound like a historical guy who thinks only in terms of the last 5 minutes. The quarterback position's never been more important in the history of the league. I won't go that far. But when you look at the downfall of Matt Schaub, how it's been an up-and-down battle to replace him ever since then, what happened in Green Bay when Aaron Rodgers went down, what happened in Cleveland when, I can't believe I'm saying this, when Brian Hoyer went down, the quarterback position is just disproportionately important. That Houston defense is still pretty darn good.
You're right. If you look at
they're not a horrible team.
Yeah, next month when we are taking a look at the 12 playoff teams,
chances
are all of them are going to have not only competent but above competent quarterbacks. Probably the worst playoff quarterback will probably be like Andy Dalton or Alex Smith, and they're certainly serviceable when you surround them with a lot of talent. But I'd love to recommend Jacksonville, but you talk about getting burned. They've burned me a few times when I've given them out as a recommendation. So
okay.
I'd put a slight lean. If you really want to play the Thursday game, and we gave a lot of time to that, I would take the Jags.
Okay, yeah, more time than it's deserving of, but that's fine. We have the luxury of doing that today. Going to the Sunday games and skipping over what would be the first one on your betting ticket, because, spoiler alert, we'll be coming back to that for one of the big three picks of the week for me.
Gee, I wonder who you like.
We start with the Brian Billick Bowl. It's Minnesota at Baltimore. The Ravens are laying 7 in this one, down from 7.5 initially. This is one of the ones that I really, really struggled on because you talked about the lines being so good this week. What I come back to in the end, I try to learn from my mistakes. And earlier in the year, and I think I even made this a lock pick, that the old Squealers were going to get off the schneid in London against Minnesota. And it was kind of similar in that this is before Pittsburgh got Le'Veon Bell back. So their running game was even more putrid than it is today. Minnesota, just by having Adrian Peterson and being able to establish the run, had a big advantage there. And you look at it now, but coming into the season, we would have said Adrian Peterson, Ray Rice, wow, strength on strength. Yeah, not so much. It has been a horrible...
Ray Rice is horrible this year.
Almost inexplicable.
And it's not even that they don't give him, a lot of times you're like, well, you just got to establish the run and run Ray Rice more.
Yeah.
They try, and it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, they haven't been able to. And I look at this, and I think, again, I don't have hardly any confidence in Minnesota, who I have 30th in my power rankings, going on the road and winning this game. I think they can keep it close. I like Minnesota to stay inside the 7 because they can run the ball better than almost anybody in the league with AP, and Baltimore is one of the worst in the league at running the ball. If you look at the trenches, you got to like the Vikings to cover.
I agree with you.
Okay.
The last 5 games, Minnesota's played relatively well. Lost to Dallas close, beat Washington at home on a Thursday night. The one dud in this stretch was at Seattle, but as we saw Monday night, no reason to hang your head there. I mean, New Orleans got crushed, for crying out loud. Quest Field. They tied Green Bay off that game, Minnesota did. And then last week they beat Chicago in overtime, a game where the coaching, I think, set the profession back at least 50 years. I don't think Baltimore's very good. I gave out Pittsburgh last week, was one of my 3 winners. They just got inside the number with that late touchdown. Thank you very much. But
do the electric slide, Kyle.
Yes. But when we did our midseason show, you said Baltimore was going to get that 6th seed. They're in the driver's seat right now.
I still think
do you
they
still
will.
think it?
I do.
I think they're going to find a way to gag it away, and I'm going to tell you why.
Because I think it's either them or my Dolphins, and I can't go far enough to pick my Dolphins.
I still think Pittsburgh and San Diego, despite seemingly crushing losses last week, are in this thing. But let me tell you something. Baltimore's probably going to win this week, straight up. They'll go to 7-6 and certainly be in the driver's seat. Their last 3 games, at Detroit, home for New England, big revenge game for the Patriots, at Cincy. Baltimore could lose out.
They could.
They could lose out because they're a much better team at home.
Yeah.
A much better team at home. So with 2 of those 3 on the road and then New England being the one team that pays a visit, I'm telling you, I think Baltimore gets an ugly win here and then falls apart.
Okay, so if it's not a recommended one.
No, it's a slight lean. It's a slight lean. It's a slight lean.
Right.
By the way, if you wait, you're going to be able to get a 7.5 here. I think some
Okay.
shops have already moved it to 7.5.
Yeah.
I could perhaps even drop those names. No one's paying us, but I would be certainly, Five Dimes looks to be, one of my favorite books, by the way. Again, they're not paying me any money to endorse them, but
right.
5 Dimes, you can get a nice 7.5.
Okay.
Some places have it 6.5. So if you like Baltimore, check out Bookmaker, among others.
Okay.
Or SBR.
All right. And that, in terms of looking at that, I do think, that Baltimore, they are going to be hard-pressed in those remaining games here.
This line should be closer to a field goal, in my opinion.
It probably should be, but there's a lot of built-in bias against Minnesota because they've been so putrid throughout the year.
Yeah, and again, you go back to the quarterback position.
Yeah,
their quarterback plays bad. Although Castle came and performed okay. Although I'd be worried about the idea of giving him any sort of long-term rope.
Oh, yeah, and nothing beyond this season.
And by the way, why did they get Josh Freeman?
At this point, it's fairly inexplicable.
This is a team that has 3 quarterbacks right now, as several others do. They should dump all 3 in the offseason.
I don't know if I'll go that far because you can't airlift a quarterback in the middle of the season and just see. Bringing him to training camp
Josh
next year
Freeman
to see what
awful.
you got. He's regressed, but
he's
this is a former 4,000-yard quarterback, Kyle. A guy with a cannon for an arm. I'd bring him into training camp next year. What do you got to lose? And it'll be a new coaching staff anyways. Now, I'd still draft somebody. They need a prime option there, which It's funny that when we talk about the teams in this game, we talk about the teams in the next game. That one of the teams at home was the other combatant in the last two AFC Championship games, the Patriots, who are laying 11.5 to the Browns. A lot of parallels potentially between these two teams here and between how I'm going to go in the game with the Browns. The most important factor to me is that Brandon Weeden, because of the concussion, will not play. So we're now looking at a situation where, in all likelihood, I think Jason Campbell's going to be good to go. And I look at this.
Be Caleb Haney.
No, I think it's going to be Campbell. I think he's going to be good to go. We're saying this midweek, but we'll see how it plays out. Almost regardless of that, you look at, again, strength on strength here. The Browns, of course, do not have Adrian Peterson. They have one of the worst running games in the league after trading Trent Richardson, which is the reason I still won't put over that deal wholeheartedly. But for New England, they're going to struggle to run the ball on the Browns, and Stephen Ridley's been kind of up and down. I look at this. This is a classic. This is my phrase here for teams like this that are annoying if you want to play the favorite and you just want the underdog to go away late in the game. Classic penis-punching opportunity for the Browns to get inside the 11.5. The world thinks they're going to get turfed out of Foxborough, and they might. But in this one, I like the Browns to annoy the general public out there, make it about a 10-point loss instead of the 11.5 that they're getting. So I think the Browns will stay just inside the number.
I'm telling you, I don't think Jason Campbell's going to play this game.
You don't think so?
I don't think he is. I'm reading right now that he hasn't been cleared.
Well, he hasn't been cleared yet, but that doesn't mean he doesn't get cleared by, like, say, Friday.
That's true. Well, as of right now, we don't know who the heck the Browns starter is going to be.
Yeah.
That said, if you forced me to make a pick, this is clearly not a recommended play.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go double-digit dog. Double-digit dogs are covering like 64% of the time this year.
Yeah.
So, you know my opinion. If there's a double-digit dog, I'm going to naturally give him a look or don't play. This would be a don't play situation. I mean, last week was a pretty deflating loss for Cleveland, losing to Jacksonville at home. New England also, what would scare me if I'm Cleveland, New England kind of had their scary moment last week against a bad Houston team.
Yeah.
So they might look to go for the jugular early, New England, in this game, but then the proverbial back door could be open if you're betting Cleveland.
That's
going to be the motivating factor. So
yeah, that's how I'm looking at this one. I alluded to you off air as we go to the next one here. There's a couple games this week where I have a hard time picturing either team getting their hand raised. And this one just epitomizes that. The rematch of the Heidi Bowl from 1968. Oakland going cross-country to take on the New York Jets. The Jets are laying 2.5 in this one. Had been 3 at one point early in the week, but it opened at 2.5. And again, as I'm saying this, I'm now reflecting back to what you've said to me about the Raiders' tendency to play poorly on the East Coast in recent years. Here's what I come back to at the end of the day, and I can't believe of all people that I never would have believed this at the beginning of the year as a positive thing here. Just the fact that Oakland has Terrell Pryor. Teams struggle to run on the Jets. That's the one good thing you can say about him at this point. And DMC is injured, as he always is this time of year. But Pryor being the dual threat there, the Jets, it cannot be overemphasized how absolutely horrific they are on offense right now. They can't do a damn thing, running or passing the ball. It has been seen in recent weeks. When having Josh Cribbs come in to run the Wildcat is the closest you can do to getting anything going. As a longtime Browns fan, been there, done that, bought the T-shirt, okay? So it is, I've seen firsthand what the Jets are going through and having to resort to something like that. I'm taking Oaktown getting the 2.5 on the road just because, again, the Jets are, it's so funny because they've both gone over our expectations for the year, but later in the year they are kind of looking
They are who we thought they were.
Yeah, they are who Dennis Green thought they were also, but especially the Jets right now, and that's why I'm going with Oaktown. Give me the road dog.
A lot of money. The majority of the money's on the Raiders, which is very scary, given how awful they are at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
The early East Coast start times. Matt McGloin is still, I think, going to get the nod here, by the way.
Yeah.
For the Raiders over Pryor. They're uncommitted, but I still think he's going to get a try. This is an ugly game. The Jets, it was just 2 weeks ago that this team was against all odds being viewed as a legitimate playoff contender. I mean, you kind of had to. They were what? They had a 500 record.
I never bought that. I figured they were going to crater. Maybe not.
I did
this
too.
Bad.
The
Maybe
point.
not this
the
bad.
point differential now.
Yeah.
Listen to this. The point differential has certainly gotten worse over the last 2 games. I mean, they were 500. Now they're 5-7.
Yeah.
Let me look up. Let me go to the old.
And by the way, too, and you may be right about McGloin versus Pryor. This is 2 games now where I'm fairly optimistic about the guy who should be in there getting cleared. Jason Campbell and Terrell Pryor. We're doing this at midweek.
Yeah.
We'll see how it plays out. Even with McGloin. What McGloin is still better than anybody the Jets.
Yeah, he is. Well, Geno Smith has been putrid, and by the way, the Jets were actually 5-4 at one point.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, so they had to be taken as legitimate playoff contenders at that point. Their point differential now is -121.
Yeah.
There's only one team in the league with a worse point differential than that, and that is Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Who at one point was on pace to become the worst team in NFL history. I can't step in on this game. You'd like to think that the Jets can maybe steal one at home, laying less than 3 to a West Coast team traveling east. But I don't know. I mean, these teams, I have these two in both in my bottom 5 power rankings. Right above Minnesota. I have the Jets 28, Raiders 29.
Okay. I have Oakland 20.
So it's a good line.
I have Oakland 25, Jets 26. So we both have them relatively
I like them a little less.
Close in there, yeah. But that's the thing that works out in the Jets' favor, and if I end up being wrong, this is a game that's got like 6-3 written all over it.
They still have a great defense. They have a great defense. I mean, the problem is they just can't come back off mistakes. The Dolphins forced them into some mistakes early. It was a pretty relatively low-scoring game early. They forced Geno Smith into making some mistakes, took advantage of some field position late in the first half, and it was pretty much over.
This is a game that is going to set back the great game of football 50 years.
Yeah,
when you look at what happens
it's horrible. I can't imagine getting involved there.
It is awful.
And also, we talked about in Houston, Jacksonville. Here's another reason you don't want to play the Jets: laying points with bad teams this time of year.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
But then again, I would never play Oakland at a 1 o'clock game. So
okay, I understand that. One of the things that's making this week so difficult in terms of picking games and in terms of the numbers being out there, we have bad teams getting matched up against one another, like the Jets in Oaktown, and some other ones we're going to get to later. And we have some really, really great teams going head-to-head right now. We talked about this off-air. The best 4 teams in the NFC are matched up in a de facto semifinals for the NFC. We could be seeing these teams in the playoffs later on in rematches.
Yeah, I was going to say, I became temporarily confused when you started talking about great teams. I had my Tony, this wasn't on my format sheet. I was looking at the wrong game. I'm like, Ricky, where do you get off calling these teams great teams? I was looking at a different game, and now, all right, I'm back on the same page here.
Yeah,
okay.
This is Carolina at New Orleans.
Okay.
The Panthers are getting 3. It had been 3.5 at the open for the Saints. And looking at this, a relatively short home favorite for how much success the Saints have had this season, but the Carolina Panthers have been the hottest team in the league. There have been a couple times in recent weeks where I've gone wrong expecting that streak to come to an end. So, again, maybe I don't have the most credibility on the Panthers at this point in time, but I say it ends here.
They're a good team.
They are a good team. They're a very good team. But, again, I think it's a bounce-back spot for New Orleans. There is going to be real desperation coming off a Monday night because it came from, we have a hope, however faint it may be, to be the number 1 seed to, oh, crap, we need to hold off Carolina so we're not playing in the wild card round on the road. I like it because this game, right, this is the difference between being the 2 seed or the 5 or the 6. I like Carolina. I like New Orleans in this one here. They're going to be playing each other twice in the month of December. Some real treats here. In one of the 2 matchups in the NFC, matching up the 4 best teams, I like the Saints over the Panthers laying the 3 at home at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
We're the Saints, by the way, 17-4 against the spread the last 21 times laying points.
Yeah.
That takes out some of the games from last year
Exactly.
where you had Joe Vitt roaming the sideline. Saints also 12-2 against the number 1, laying 7 points or less at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome.
Okay.
They're off a loss.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's, I think, going to think the Saints are going to bounce back here.
That's what I'm looking for.
Give me the other side, and I'm recommending it.
Wow.
Give me Carolina.
Okay.
Last year, I jumped on the Seattle bandwagon.
Okay.
They came up a little short, but in my mind, they were the best team in the league going to the playoffs.
I thought so, yeah.
They just got kind of hosed that they had to go to Atlanta, and they fell into an early hole. I have a similar feeling about Carolina this year.
Okay.
This team just doesn't have any weaknesses.
They're not great at running the ball.
I think they're pretty good. With Newton's got that interesting dynamic.
Well,
with the mobile, yes.
As a jaded D'Angelo Williams fantasy owner, I guess. But yeah, if you're looking at it with Newton in the mix,
he brings a different dynamic. Carolina beat New Orleans twice last year, by the way.
Okay.
Again, that was a New Orleans down year. I mean, Sean Payton was not on the sideline.
Yeah.
We talked about this year teams the week after playing Seattle have not fared well.
The car crash effect.
Yeah. I have these teams, again, you talk about the lines makers doing a good job. This is a good number. I have Carolina number 4 in my power rankings. I have New Orleans number 5.
I have New Orleans
it's
3,
basically
Carolina
dead even.
6. Okay.
New Orleans laying the 3. I know it seems just suicidal to go against the Saints as a short favorite in this dome, but keep in mind, last time they were here, they needed to scrape by San Francisco, a team that Carolina handled on the road.
Yeah.
I just think Carolina right now is playing at a different level.
They're playing very strong.
First recommended play this week, give me the Panthers.
Very interesting. Well, we move from teams on the top tier of your power rankings and also the FDH power rankings to two teams on the second tier. And again, even matchup between them.
Another great line here.
I got Philadelphia at 10 in the power rankings for FDH and Detroit at 11. And in this one,
that's very interesting. I have that flip-flopped.
Okay.
Detroit at 10, Philly 11. So the line of 2.5 makes sense.
It does. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Not quite getting the 3 for home field because, I have Detroit. I view them a little better. Although, not to interrupt, Rick Morris,
ahead.
I was reading several general managers around the NFC believe the Eagles to be the better team. You'd be surprised how little love off that Green Bay game Detroit is getting around the league right now. If you talk to people, they're getting almost no love.
I think the thing of it is, and the Eagles are laying 2.5 at the link, and that's been a pretty steady line throughout the week. I think it was just baked into the cake, the assumption that with Matt Flynn out there for Green Bay, that it was going to be a curb stomping. So it was kind of like when Detroit delivered on what we all expected, Kyle, it's all about what you do versus expectations. Detroit didn't shock anybody when they did that.
Here's the thing, though. Final score is 40-10, which is a curb stomping, like you mentioned. It should have been worse. They outgained the Packers on Thanksgiving afternoon.
Yeah.
My girlfriend's father, huge Lions fan, he was real happy during Thanksgiving. It was great. He brought the TV, too. Like my family, who, when we went over there Saturday, tried to say, you better hope this Ohio State-Michigan game ends soon. It's almost time for dinner.
I could see my dad doing that.
What a bunch of ingrates
Bloody
this
unlikely.
family is.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. Anyway, I digress. Thanksgiving afternoon, as I remember longingly. Detroit outgained Green Bay. Are you ready for this?
Okay.
561 to 126.
Yeah.
That indicates to me the game should have been worse than 40-10. Remember, Green Bay's only score?
Yeah.
Defense.
Right.
Detroit had 4 turnovers in that game.
Yeah.
They still won by 30. They had 5 turnovers the week before against Tampa Bay and almost won that game. They probably should have won. They kind of blew it at the end of both halves, if I remember correctly, with interceptions. I want to pull the trigger on Detroit here for some reason.
I'm going to.
I love it.
Give me the Lions and the 2.5 on the road.
I love it. I think they're a slightly better team. The Eagles, it's funny how they've been. Now, remember, before the year, I said that they would jump all the way up to 8-8 and be in play for a division. I said Dallas would take the reins early, but look for the Eagles to come on.
You believed in them more than I did.
We're seeing that. But they've won 4 in a row now, Philadelphia, and I feel that the stock on them is just a little bit too high. They have games after this at Minnesota, home for Chicago, and then the big one, obviously, at Dallas. I could see them just splitting, going 9-7 and missing the playoffs. I'll say this, though. Here's why I'm not recommending Detroit. The Eagles are finally starting to win some home games.
Yeah.
And they didn't cover last week. They were laying 3 and a hook against Arizona. The hook got them. So I'm a little trepidatious because I still think that trend, the Eagles' home trend, is due to even out.
Once in a while, I can distill my reason for leaning a certain way to one element, and here's what that element is. The Eagles are still awful defensively.
And Detroit, do you know who's not? Do you know who's very good offensively?
Who?
Detroit.
Well, yes.
I mean,
yes, exactly.
I mean, they might be dumb and coached by your boy, Jim Schwartz. He's a very naughty term.
If somebody were to put one of those fine guns you were wielding last week to your head, there's a reference, and said, which team you need them to make a stop late in the game, Detroit or Philadelphia? Who do you pick?
Do I get neither A or B? But no, I would take Detroit. You're right. Philadelphia, it's funny.
That's what it is.
Foles has played great and deserves to be the starter. We talked about this, I think it was a month or so ago, maybe even longer, where the key with Foles, why he's working better in Chip Kelly's offense than was Mike Vick, he gets the ball out sooner.
Right.
And the whole thing in this offense is it's not about necessarily slowly progressing through your reads. It's like, hey, first guy open, get him the ball.
Right.
And then just get up and do it all over again.
Right.
So he's worked out, but I don't think he's the long-term answer in Philly.
That's very interesting.
When I say long-term, I mean next year and beyond.
Okay.
I still think they need a more mobile guy to run this offense at full speed.
Okay. Well, Chip Kelly...
Very good line, though, on this game.
Chip Kelly at the moment doesn't agree with that, but that's very interesting.
Well, what's he going to say?
Well, he said Nick Foles is his quarterback for the next 1,000 years as far as he's concerned.
Well, that would be interesting because I think, in about 10 years, isn't Nick Foles going to be unable to play position.
Yeah, I mean that
Just
kind
like
of,
I'm unable to speak right now.
Exactly. That brings to mind that old saying: in the long run, we're all dead. So I think he might want that back about Nick Foles at some point.
That's usually the Republican position on any sort of environmental issue, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, that'll happen in our grandchildren's lifetime. What are you so concerned about? I think I've said that a few times.
Yes. I'll recycle. Just don't make me walk down the street and throw in a different garbage receptacle, right?
Exactly. I can't be bothered to recycle. I am the bane of landfills all across this great country.
Yes.
We come to the next game here. We come to a city that's an open landfill. How's that for a segue here? This is the fine city of Pittsburgh. They are laying 3 at home to my Miami Dolphins. The Steelers out to avenge their loss to the perfect team of 1972 in the NFL playoffs. And as I look at this game here, laying that field goal, and again, 2 teams that I have relatively close in our power rankings.
This is another quality line.
Miami 15 and Pittsburgh at 19, albeit I have Pittsburgh on the 3rd tier and Miami on the 2nd tier. This is another one. I kind of have a hard time picturing either one of these teams winning at this point, and yet they're both at least on the periphery of the AFC playoff race. That tells you about how awful the race to the bottom for the 6th seed is. In the end, in this one here, you look at, again, Pittsburgh, who couldn't get it done against Baltimore in that big grudge match last week, versus Miami, that is just inexplicably in recent weeks not crumbled under the weight of the incognito scandal and everything that's been happening there in that locker room. A revenge game for Mike Wallace, who is all of a sudden once again relatively hot. Give me my Fish getting 3.5 at Heinz. I'm all over the Dolphins here. Not a recommended pick, but
I'm sitting this one out, but I'll be honest with you, I see the Steelers winning.
Okay.
And you talk about avenging that 1972 loss. Pittsburgh's done a very good job doing that through the years. In 2010, they beat Miami 23-22. 2010 must have been the 2009 season. They played them the last week here, because I'm looking at the dates. They beat them October 2010. They beat them January 2010. So yeah, that was the
twice in a calendar year.
Yes, 30-24. They beat them. That infamous 3-0 game on Monday Night Football in 2007. You remember that one?
Yeah.
That was when Heinz Field became known as the horrible, the field itself is quite terrible there. They won on a late field goal, one of the worst games I've ever seen in my life.
I would have thought that the overall-wearing denizens of that city would settle for having a cow pasture for a football field.
To be honest with you, Pittsburgh has actually beaten Miami 5 straight times. So that makes me, that's kind of a weird historical stat.
Point well taken. So I guess they've already wiped out
and
the memories
both teams,
of 72.
Both teams are kind of, talk about Miami inexplicably getting it together. Pittsburgh's gotten it together, too. They had a chance, obviously, to force overtime. The 2-point conversion was no good in Baltimore. Thanksgiving did cover with them, though, last week. Thank you very much. It was their 4th straight ATS win, Pittsburgh. I don't think they're dead yet. I see them winning a very close game. I'm not recommending this one either.
Okay.
I see Pittsburgh staying, and for them, this is do or die. If they lose this game, they're out.
Absolutely.
They're out because they'll be 2 back of Miami and
yes.
have no tiebreaker. So they'll be done. It'll be interesting to see, much like Miami with incognito, although not nearly as serious, how Pittsburgh responds to the Tomlin fallout. So
absolutely,
I think Pittsburgh ekes out a win here.
Okay. Well, we move to the next one, and this is another example of what I said previously about 2 teams. I can't believe one of them is going to get their hand raised. In this one, it is Buffalo. They're getting 3 up from 2.5 at the open at Tampa Bay. And with how they looked last week, Tampa Bay, a really deflating return to earth, how they looked against Carolina. I now have Tampa Bay 32 in my power rankings. They have tasted the bottom for the first time all year, yeah.
Wow.
Just absolutely exposed in that game against Carolina.
Wow.
Buffalo, you look at it on the surface of, well, they lost to Atlanta. Atlanta hadn't won in a long time. Atlanta, just like Houston, way better than the record. It's a fluke down year for them. They've had a lot of injuries. I don't take it out on Buffalo for losing that game against a Falcon team that's better than its record. Of the 2,
that Toronto thing does not help the Bills, by the way. They need to stop doing that.
More
That's
or less
awful.
a neutral site game.
It was. The fans were cheering for the Falcons half the time, it seemed.
Well, not all of them. Toronto Mayor Rob Ford was rocking his Bills jersey, so there was that to offset it.
Yeah, in between hits of the crack pipe, right?
Yeah. I believe he had the E-meth pipe from Saturday Night Live. But with the Bills getting 3 in this one here, in a battle of 2 bad teams, put the gun to my head, I say take the Bills in the 3.
I hate this game. Originally, I really like Tampa Bay. I have Tampa Bay 24th in my power rankings, so that is a huge difference between you and I.
We really differ on that.
And I have Buffalo 25th.
Okay.
Or, pardon me, 26th.
I have Buffalo 24th.
Okay. But I just read how a lot of these sharps kind of like the Bills, possibly plus the points in some of these games down the stretch. We know from earlier in the year, give Buffalo some points to play with. They usually can make it work for you. Last week, ironically, the first time all year they were favored. That's why I gave Atlanta out. That was a nice winner for me, part of my 3-0 week. I'm sitting out this game. I have no unearthly idea about this game. You talk about you're scratching your head who's going to get their hand raised here. It's me.
Yeah.
On a card where I don't like a lot of the games, that may be my least favorite. That and the Oakland Jets game.
It's funny because the next one for me, and I know you would probably not agonize as much as I did on this next one here. The next one was the toughest one for me out of the entire one because we talk about who's going to get their hands raised. Straight up, it's pretty easy to guess on this next one. But as far as are they going to be going over clean in the middle, as it were, versus the spread, this next one is just very, very tough. It's Tennessee getting 12.5. It had been 13.5 at the open against Denver. And again, I know how you are about double-digit favorites and everything. I went with the Brownies in the other example of that earlier on. I'm reversing,
as a dog.
Yeah, getting that. I'm reversing myself here and going with the favorite. I'll take Denver with the 12.5. I've been saying for a couple of weeks. Again, I know, and so much of the perception right now in the league is unfair because it's based on these false equivalencies and what's happened to the Denver Broncos.
They have not been the same team the last 6 weeks.
Kyle, they weren't going to look like they looked in September and the beginning of October all the way through the season.
No.
That is an unfair standard. Denver's the best team still in the AFC right now. And again, I think this is an opportunity for them to kind of get well here. Which has been kind of a little bit of a theme this week in some of the teams that I've looked at. I like Denver to cover that 12.5, maybe not by a lot, but it kind of takes a lot to cover 12.5 anyways. I'll take the Broncos in this one.
Look, if you made me play it, I'd take Tennessee. Double-digit dog. We talked about 65% blind this year. But it's not going to be a recommended play because that would not be fun on the road. This is Tennessee's third straight road game.
Yeah.
Their season probably comes to an end here, even in the weak AFC. A loss would drop them to 5-8.
As far as I'm concerned, it already has. But I understand what you're saying technically if they ran the slate.
Ryan Fitzpatrick looked really horrible last week, too, in Indianapolis. That's the reason the Colts were able to win the game, not anything the Colts really did. You know, it's interesting for as much as the Broncos, quote-unquote, have struggled, as you sort of, poked fun at people who have been saying that. They have covered 4 of the last 5 games.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think that they'll win this one, and it'll be right around the number. It'll be right around. I could see Tennessee backdooring them, perhaps. Maybe getting a late touchdown when down 17.
They could.
Denver's going to lose a game. Call me crazy. Denver will lose a game at some point the rest of the year.
I think they very well might.
Maybe next week against San Diego at home.
I think they very well might, but it's the kind of thing also, too. See, I think Denver is overdue at this point for a performance on par with the dominance of early on. I said they weren't going to do it for 16 games in a row, but you were going to see some flashes of it. Eric Decker pretty much looked like those Broncos squads personified last week with everything he put together. I just think Denver is going to have a real...
They were up big early, too, in that game. So
and I think they're just going to have a wire-to-wire beating that they lay on somebody the rest of the way. And like you said, they may lose a game. They may taste both extremes. I think this is the good extreme this week. Another team there in the AFC West, the team that already has no chance of winning the division at this point and hasn't for some time, San Diego Chargers in the Eli Manning Bowl. They are laying 3 at home against Eli Manning and the Giants. And this is one where I really kind of agonized over it. I went back and forth. I got the Giants 18 in my power rankings, top of the third tier. San Diego 21. So I got them very close. An uncanny amount of games this week.
Yeah.
Thumbs up to the booker because so many of the games this week, a lot of tough matchups here. This is the WrestleMania of the regular season as far as the slate goes. That includes, I guess, some bad undercard matches as well. But
I see where you're working.
Yes,
I see how you're doing it.
I'm going back and forth on this one, back and forth. The Giants in a putrid division, and the one that is easiest to win because of the other teams that are in it in the division. Not dead yet in the AFC East. San Diego barely clinging to relevancy even for that last horrible wild card spot in the AFC. A little bit more at stake here. I'll take the Giants getting the 3 points to stay in it. I know they're traveling, cross country here, which troubles you, no doubt.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. I know it's an AFC team favored against the NFC, and since some early season surprising results in the non-conference game, the NFC's really just dominated the last 2 months.
Yes.
That said, I'll tell you what, I'm giving out a recommendation on San Diego this week.
Wow, okay.
Both these teams are 5-7, but that's where the differences end. San Diego 5-7, point differential +2. Giants 5-7, point differential -60 for the year. You talk about being alive for that last wild card spot. That's the difference. The Giants, I know that they're, they kind of are just as much in it for the NFC East. But with Dallas and Philly playing that last week, I just don't think they are. That was an ugly win they had last week against Washington, an undeserved win. I don't think the Giants are very good. I had this team winning the NFC East before the year. That was a really horrible pick in retrospect. The only solace I can take there is that most other people had them winning the division. San Diego was the team when we did that mid-year show. I said that they would somehow, some way get the last wild card spot. I still think they have a chance, but that would entail them winning here.
They got to get real hot to do that. I guess part of
it is... They do close the year at home versus Oakland and Kansas City.
Right.
I could see this team winning 3 of its final 4 to get back to 8-8, and then it will probably come down to a tiebreaker.
They have no margin of error at this point. They have to do something like that. On our extremely abbreviated version of the show last week, which I think was like 7 minutes when I gave out all the picks here, I guess I'm learning from my mistake of last week because my assumption was, and I picked Washington on Sunday night because I said, and you're somebody that understands the feel of football the way that I do, it felt like, if you remember in recent years with the Giants, you get to December, and it's like, they got games here, and they need this one. This is a team they can easily beat. They're going to need this one. They're going to stay in it longer, and then they cough it up, and by the end of the season, they're out of it. That's happened to the Giants every year. They haven't won the Super Bowl the last couple of years. What a strange thing to say about a team that's won 2 Super Bowls in recent years. And they didn't collapse against Washington. I guess I'm learning from that.
Remember,
they may have more fortitude than I gave them credit for last week.
Just because it's a must-win game.
Famous last words about the Giants.
Remember, just because a team must win, quote-unquote, doesn't mean they will win.
But
because
they've been awful in December must-win games in recent years.
Yeah.
And that's where I thought they were going to step on their Johnsons against Washington, and they didn't.
They didn't, but I think they will.
Tried.
That's because Washington stepped on its own Johnson a little harder.
Okay.
So I think San Diego, a team who has really not played a bad game this year. I think the race for the last AFC wild card, it's a 4-team race at this point.
Okay.
Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Miami, San Diego. I have those 4 teams rated 17 through 20 in that order in my power rankings.
Okay.
I could make a case of those 4, although San Diego, I said they're last as of right now. I might, on a neutral field, I might take them to beat any of those other teams.
Okay.
They have not played a horrible game this year.
Okay.
They only lost by 7 to Cincinnati last week. I know the offense didn't do a ton, but that's a good defense they were facing there. The Giants do not have a good defense.
Right.
And remember, it was 2 weeks ago this team went into Arrowhead and carved up the Chiefs.
That's true.
The Giants don't have a...
The Chiefs also lost, like, every member of their defensive
unit
to injuries.
Yeah, but you know what?
Fluke.
I mean, the Giants haven't beaten anyone good this year.
Yeah.
They beat Minnesota with Freeman, Philly with Barkley, Oakland, and then Green Bay with, who's your boy? Tolzien.
Yeah.
Phillip Rivers cut above the rest, much like I said about Tony Romo a couple weeks ago when the Giants lost to them.
Exactly, but the quarterback that is really a cut above the rest.
I really like San Diego now. I really talked myself into that one.
Okay.
I really like San Diego.
All right, so you've got 2 picks. It's interesting. You and I have differed on your 2 picks thus far. We go now to, I said before the season, I think you agreed with me. Most of the pundits I've talked to have agreed with me. What is going to be the defining rivalry of the NFC in this decade? We are seeing it at Seattle and San Francisco. You have the Seahawks riding high, the best team in the league right now, number 1 in probably everybody's power rankings. They have the best record in the league. They are getting 2.5 at San Francisco, down from 3 initially. So the 49ers, a short favorite at home. And what it just comes down to as simply as this, and you can go awry with this theory a lot of times here, but coming into the season, and I had them 2 of my top 5 teams in the league, neither one has done anything to change my opinion on that as we've gone along. This being the battle of the other top 2 teams in the NFC this year, clearly, you just see it being a split. And the 49ers have a lot of revenge after what happened, the way that they got absolutely turfed in that primetime game at Seattle. It's going to be hard for the Seahawks to get up again as much as they were Monday night.
Yeah.
You're not going to let down against your arch rival. It's a weird spot. It can never be a true letdown game when it's 49ers week because these 2 teams already have a very special kind of back and forth going. But all things considered, I just think San Francisco's in a better spot. They're not the better team right now.
No.
See, I've got Seattle going to the Super Bowl the same way that you do, too. That's not to say I think they're going to win every game the rest of the year. And if they're going to lose to anybody, it's the 49ers. Take the 49ers laying the 2.5 late Sunday afternoon at Fox.
By the way, can you tell your buddy Ray Smalley that I've been on the Seahawks bandwagon longer than anybody?
Yes, the great Platinum Smalls from DOU Productions. Yeah, he was joking me today off air. He was waiting for you to put yourself over about being Seattle and the first on them. And you know,
well, it was about a year ago today that I told you about how great the Seattle Seahawks team, wasn't it?
You know what? Who was it? John McEnroe. It ain't bragging if you can do it. It ain't bragging, Kyle. You did.
They've lost 2 games in the last 365 days.
Yes.
One of them, the only game they lost this regular season against Indianapolis, was the game they should have won. And the playoff game against Atlanta, they should have won that too.
And no games at home since the state passed a very controversial initiative on their ballot. Cause and effect, who knows?
Hey, every time I've learned something about the Seahawks, whether it's their secondary's recreational habits or the fact that they chant Russell Wilson in the way of the Fish song Wilson. Every time I learn something about this Seattle Seahawks team, I just like them more. Great team, great city, but this is a letdown. They're not going to win this week.
Okay.
They don't need it. San Francisco needs this game way more than Seattle.
Okay, so San
way
Francisco's
more.
a lean for you?
Yeah, a lean.
Okay.
I'm not recommending the 49ers just because they have kind of struggled a bit against the top teams. I mean, they annihilate all the bad teams.
Okay.
I'll tell you this. San Francisco will easily, or should easily, even though 2 of them are on the road, win their final 3 games, at Tampa, home for Atlanta, and then at Arizona, a game that actually could be for the final wildcard spot if they're not careful. But so San Francisco is safe. Like we talked about at the top of the show, they're safe as a wild card. If they lose this game, it'll be their last loss of the year.
All right. The next one here, it's not often that I come to you and say, hey, I got nothing, but I can't find a line anywhere on
there
this
is no
one.
line. I have no opinion on this
Atlanta
game.
and
I have
Green
no
Bay?
idea.
Okay.
Don Majkowski could be the quarterback for Green Bay for all I know.
All right. I'm just going to have to call an audible on this one here. I will tweet at the FDH Lounge later in the week when there is one that comes up. So there's not anything anywhere. Because, we were reaching on the 11.5 one for the Browns because it's hard to get
one book has that line at least. They're literally, you can literally not bet on this Atlanta-Green Bay game right now. No one has a line out on it. And if there's no line, I have no advice.
All right, yeah, I can't remember
I would
ever
say
having to do
Green
this.
Bay is going to be a relatively short favorite. More than a field goal, less than a touchdown in that no man's land, I would say.
Well,
I just, as
don't
much as I
team
think
at Lambeau in December. I mean, that's got to be worth something.
Yeah, but Atlanta isn't as bad as their record, as much as I like to laugh at them.
Well, exactly.
And here's the thing with Green Bay. Normally a team off 5 straight spread losses, I'd look to back. Their quarterback plays horrible.
It is.
I don't care who it is. Seneca Wallace stinks. Scott Tolzien stinks.
Yeah.
And Matt Flynn, has there ever been a more overrated performance than that game he had against Detroit 3 years ago?
Yeah,
He's always going to keep getting looks because of that. People are going, remember when Matt Flynn threw for 480 yards?
Kyle, he's getting looks because the depth of quarterbacking in this league right now, and part of it is injuries. Okay, the Browns have had to go to their 4th, 5th, 6th guy through the course of the year. But the guys that are getting picked up are so god-awful. He's
been signed twice in by different teams in the
Browns
last 2 years to be the starter. Yeah, but
Haney.
to be the starter, Matt Flynn, they thought this guy.
understand.
The Browns are only signing Caleb Haney, disaster relief fund. Matt Flynn last year.
But who would you rather start, Matt Flynn or Caleb Haney, is my point.
I don't know. That's how little regard I have for him. Matt Flynn is horrible.
Kyle, that's an easy call for me.
Did you see how horrible Matt Flynn was last week?
He saw
was
that.
Horrible.
I saw that. Again, and it's one of those things where, and I go back and forth on this, he is getting airlifted in the middle of the season, and I'm never a proponent of grading somebody based on that. Having said that, yes, it was his old system and the system under which he put up 500-plus yards or whatever it was against the Lions previously.
It was the 3rd team he's been on this year, and he stunk with all of them. I mean, sometimes you just can't blame the system. But this guy's not good.
I guess what I look at is this. We go back to the concept of March Madness, one shining moment.
Mm-hmm.
That one shining moment he had is more than Caleb Haney will ever have.
I don't know.
Caleb
Haney had that one shining moment in the NFC Championship game, and at least that game mattered. Flynn was in a game with all the backups.
Where he was mediocre enough to keep them relatively kind of hanging around.
Yes. Well, I mean, what's the difference between that and Matt Flynn throwing for bazillion yards in a game where neither team had anything to play for. End of the day, here's my point.
Yeah.
Matt Flynn, I don't think is much better than Caleb Haney if he's better at all. They both stink, and it's sad that both of them might start in NFL Week 13.
That's just the state
or
of
14.
NFL quarterbacking right now.
Which is sad because last year it really seemed to be at its all-time high. It just seems that the bad teams right now, it's real bad under center.
Yeah.
It's real bad.
And that's one of the things, too.
Atlanta, by the way.
Yeah.
The only bad team that does not have to worry about drafting a quarterback, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Jadeveon Clowney may be coming to Atlanta next year.
Yeah.
Depending on how – I mean, if I was Atlanta, I'd tank to get him. Stop trying to win games.
Exactly.
I mean, they had to win one to at least feel good about themselves, a little self-esteem.
What are you trying to win for at this point?
Yeah, I mean, they have no chance to do anything else. So,
well, it is just funny with my familiarity with the area, for as much as I am down there because of my brother's family being there and visiting the family, all the Bulldog fans down there that are like also Falcon fans, you always have this whole thing whenever the Browns draft somebody from Michigan, people who don't want to get behind him. Braylon Edwards is a complete a-hole, but there's a tiny part of him that's right. He was never fully accepted because he was a Wolverine. Are those Falcons/Bulldog fans going to get behind Jadeveon Clowney, even though he might be the best edge rusher to come out of college in the last 15 years because he's a South Carolina guy, because he played for the old ball coach?
That'd be sad. How sad.
That's the world we live in, though. I'm just telling you. Yeah. That's the mentality of people. It is really sad.
Yeah.
What is not
2 red states, by the way.
You had to point that out, of course. What has not been sad is the recent momentum of my big 3 picks. 2-1 last week, doing pretty good over the course of the last couple weeks after 16-22-1 after bottoming out at 0-12 to start the year. I said at the time, this is the time to jump on.
Yeah, and you've been great since then.
Yeah, thank
you. Both on and off.
Both 0-12.
Both on and off the show, I'd like to say.
Thank you. I truly appreciate that. Going to my ones here this week on a slate where you and I both agreed it was really hard to find anything we really liked too much. The first one here, old road favorite Ricky asserts himself in a battle of 2 of the league's teams that really do a lot to celebrate Native American heritage, which I really appreciate about both of them. It's the Chiefs at the Redskins here.
Lord.
Kansas City is hosting the 3. Did you see Daniel Snyder putting over the Navajo signal callers a few weeks ago when they were wearing the Redskins gear? Truly heartwarming, I thought, and I'm not even a Dan Snyder guy. The Chiefs are laying 3 in this one at D.C. This, to me, is a classic bounce-back spot. I know that every mouth breather on God's green earth is lining up the same way as me, and that does give me pause, Kyle. That does.
It should.
As does the fact that Washington has failed to cover 4 games in a row. These streaks don't go on forever. And on my old red black at the roulette wheel thing, they're due to cover 1. But Kansas City, they weren't as great as they looked when they were 9-0. They're not as bad as they looked the last 3 weeks. The truth lies somewhere in the middle, and that truth is a hell of a lot better than where the Redskins are. Take the Chiefs to win by at least 10.
But you know what? We've come to this with the Redskins, a team that I think you and I were down on more than just about anyone going into the year. I mean, we both said they were going to have a losing record this year. I now kind of feel that I'm on an island thinking that they're a lot better than their record shows now. They weren't as good as their record last year. And they're not as bad as their record this year. They're going to bounce back next year and be somewhere in between.
Their defense blows, and RG3 has a lot more to prove than it looked like a year ago.
Well, he was rushed back. That whole situation was mismanaged from the Rat family by day one. Okay, your boys, the Shanahans.
But he hasn't done much outside of a gimmick offense.
Well, he was rushed back.
Versus Russell Wilson, who was a complete spectrum quarterback, who came into the league the same time he did. RG3... Get back to me when he does an awful lot of impressive stuff outside of the read option.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
If you were to redo last year's draft, the Redskins would be right to trade up to take a quarterback number 2 after Andrew Luck, because Luck would still be first, obviously. Yeah. It's hard to say that Russell Wilson wouldn't deserve now to go in that spot. Obviously, at the time, no one would take Russell Wilson second at the time.
RG3 at this point is not on the same tier with those 2.
No. But, and a lot of that, again, Russell Wilson's surrounded by a much better team.
True.
But I hate this game.
But are his receivers much better than what RG3? RG3 has Pierre Garçon.
Yeah, how'd he work out last Sunday? One of the worst games I've ever seen by a receiver in league history.
Yeah, true. That defense, boy,
their defense stinks.
Their Fletcher's falling down.
Yeah. That's good. I like that one. Their defense stinks. So I'm staying off this game. I hate this game.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. It has something to do with probably the fact that, well, no, I don't know if it was the first game I crossed out, really.
Okay.
Well, no, I hate this game more than I hate Houston-Jacksonville. Houston-Jacksonville, I at least said, we got a home, well, I guess this game's the home dog,
Jags,
too.
Yeah, on that one you
This
said.
game, well, yeah, that came later in the week. I thought about it a little more. I'm like, I
Okay.
can make a case for Jacksonville. I can't make a case for either side here.
Okay.
No, thank you.
All right. I didn't expect you to be enthusiastic about that pick there. Another one that I have coming up here, the second of my big three picks, and I'm actually drawing a blank as I'm looking at the list here at the moment. It's one of those things where when you're saying it, you want to think that by the time the words are coming out of your mouth, you focused in on that part of the sheet, but I came up swinging and missing there. Here we go. I now see the asterisk next to your Indianapolis Colts. They are getting 6 on the road at Cincinnati. The Bengals were laying 5.5 early on. This is the thing where, again, we've talked about this before, the defensive injuries with the Bengals, they haven't been the same team since. You look a little confused, Kyle.
I think we missed the Monday night game, I just realized. Programming note.
Programming note? We actually did. You know what? Let's skip to that. You're right.
Here, we'll do it like this. We'll do it. The only reason I thought of it is this reason.
Yeah.
I like the Bears. That's my third recommendation this week.
That's your third one. Okay.
Yeah, I like the Bears. We'll skip through it. I like the Bears.
All right.
On Monday night. They're due to cover. They have the worst spread record in the league. They're due to cover.
I like the Bears also. They're laying 1 and have been a pick 'em against Dallas. I said to you, because you were at a Monday nighter at Texas Stadium, were you not? Bears
last year, it was this matchup.
It's like, why are these teams always on Monday night, Kyle? I don't get this.
I don't know.
It's weird.
For Tony Romo, it cannot be any worse than it was last year. That was his awful game. Every year he does that Tony Romo game, and he threw like 800 interceptions.
Yeah.
And, your boy Kyle Orton saw the field. But I like the Bears to make it 2 years in a row over the Cowboys on Monday night.
All right. So you and I at least concur on one of your 3 picks there. I like the Bears as well in this one. Yeah, we had skipped over that inadvertently. It's the Colts. They're getting 6. Had been 5.5 at the open that the Bengals were laying at Cincinnati. I said to you off air, Kyle, I think right now, and again, I felt like a couple weeks ago, people were more so where I was at on the Bengals in terms of noticing just, you lose your top cornerback, you lose your top defensive tackle, who's one of the best overall players in the league.
Geno Atkins.
Yeah, and Geno Atkins. And, again, I think Cincinnati is overvalued at the moment. I think the Colts are undervalued. For the Colts, again, I go back to this. It's easy to make too much of it, but the top-tier victories they have, they're the team in the league that's beaten Seattle, San Francisco thus far this season. Denver, beaten all 3 of them. It's just, I think they're undervalued at the moment.
Yeah, they've also lost to San Diego.
Yeah.
Miami. Played 2 close games with Tennessee. Got annihilated by the Rams. Annihilated by Arizona. They are the most high-variance team in the league.
Well, they play to the level of their competition. That's the one constant in what I'm saying and in what you're saying.
Barely beat the Raiders.
And, the Bengals, for a team that's basically on their level, I mean, I have Indy at the bottom of my top tier at 8, Cincinnati at the top of my second tier at 9, but that's still back-to-back, if you will. I just think, again, everybody's so much more on Cincinnati than on Indy at the moment, and I disagree. I like Indy, especially now that the line's up to 6. Give me the Colts, Kyle, for the second of my 2 picks here. Give me the road dog.
See, I'm with everyone else. I think this spread is accurate. I think I have the Bengals 7 in my power rankings. I have the Colts 14.
Okay.
I other than Andrew Luck, there is nothing to like about this team. I've said that for a while. This is a team that before the year I said would only win 7 or 8 games. Maybe look foolish with the early wins.
They've been kind of opportunistic defensively.
They've been a fortunate team the last 2 years. I just think this is a huge game, by the way. We need to talk about this. Winner here is likely to get the 3 seed.
There's a lot on the line.
Which means they'll play that bad wild card team
versus getting Kansas City.
Who will give the way Kansas City's playing. You wouldn't probably mind that one at home either. But still, I think this is a really big game, and the Bengals hold serve at home.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not going to lay it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lean. I would love to have given this out as a recommendation, but the points is getting a little too high. I think it's a fair. Again, like a lot of these games, it's a fair number this week.
All right.
I really think, unlike yourself, that this number is an accurate reflection of the discrepancy between these two teams.
Okay. I can't on a week where you and I both agreed that it was a very tough card and not about a lot of other things apparently along the way. Again,
it shows how tough it is. We disagree on a lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. I have been
Jamie Horowitz produced this program.
I have been going to gut feelings for a lot of my picks here, and I think that's where you've been kind of disagreeing with them. No bigger gut feeling I have than this last one, a battle of the other 2 teams in the NFC West, a battle of the two cities that have called home to the Cardinals over the years here. It's Arizona. They are laying 6. It had been 7 at the open against the St. Louis Rams. And Arizona is my 1,000-star gold-plated lock of the millennium for NFL Week 14.
I thought you were a big Rams guy.
Yeah, I got off that bandwagon pretty early when I saw I was wrong. Don't get me wrong. They've had some big games that have shocked me and shocked a lot of people this year. Coming to mind immediately, Indianapolis and Chicago. But in looking at this one here, what I just keep coming back to is Arizona is so good, almost historically good, when you look at the record books, at defending the run and especially at home. Only strength St. Louis has at this point, and I'm calling it a strength almost in air quotes, because it's not like they're setting the world on fire, but they're pretty good at it, is running the ball with Zach Stacy. Zach Stacy ain't going to get crap on Sunday. It's not like they can pass the ball to establish any kind of counter threat there. Arizona's just going to be pinning back their ears, and, I mean, this one has like 27-6 at least written all over it. I just think Arizona bounces back from that showing against Philadelphia. It's a must-win game for them, having lost at Philadelphia, stay on the periphery of the wild card race with San Francisco here at this point. Give me the Cardinals, laying 6 to roll on the Rams.
If I could throw them in a teaser with Cincinnati, I'd love Arizona. That's not the way we do this program, is it?
Okay.
I actually would lean the other way.
Wow.
I have these teams back-to-back in my power rankings at 12 and 13.
Whoa, that's our other biggest variance. I have Arizona at 12 on the second tier.
Okay, so same with me.
I have St. Louis on the third tier at 20.
I think the Rams, they caught my look. I was a lot more down on them before the year than you were.
Yeah,
but that win over
flip-flopped on that.
But I don't love them necessarily, but they routed Chicago, they routed Indianapolis. I've got them rated higher than those teams because of that. And I think they're going to keep this game close. It's going to be an ugly game. Keep this in mind. When these teams met in Week 1, I thought the value was completely on Arizona, who was a 6-point dog in St. Louis and covered in a 3-point loss. Now the line has flipped completely over, done a 180, and Arizona's a 6-point favorite. This is a line that should be closer to a field goal.
So closer to neutral, or on a neutral field being even?
Yeah, barely. Arizona maybe -1 on a neutral field.
Really?
Yeah, I think these teams are very even.
Given where the Arizona offense is at this point, given the way that their defense
I don't like Arizona's offense. I don't know how. Carson Palmer, I hope they don't commit to him long term. That would be a bad idea.
I don't think they're going to commit to him long term, but Michael Floyd is finally looking like the guy we expected to see when he came out. The first legitimate alternative that they've had to Larry Fitzgerald since Anquan Bolden, which you're seeing how much of the offense that's keying. I must admit, I'm a pretty frustrated Andre Ellington fantasy owner at the moment.
I like Andre Ellington, by the way.
Yeah, I just wish for 6 yards a carry, and the guy can't get a chance to earn significant fantasy points.
That's because Arians has to give it to his boy Mendenhall.
I know.
By the way, Bruce Arians has done a hell of a job the last 2 years as a head coach.
He has. The one thing I will say,
you hate Bruce Arians, don't you?
I'm not a big Bruce Arians guy.
You hate him.
Yeah,
you rip him off air all the time.
Well, exactly. Yeah, having had to watch his awful Arians Nation offense in Cleveland many years ago. Although I'm starting to realize how much that has to do with the guy that I really loathe, Botch Davis. But this is one of these things. I was thinking about this today. Let me put the question to you here before we wrap it. The game that they had against Indianapolis and where they just rolled on them.
That was a fluky game.
Yeah. Does Arians have more of an edge going up against them because he knows the personnel as well as the schemes, or do they have more of an edge going up against him? They only know the schemes, not his personnel. I think if you're the assistant coming back and you've been there on the inside on their operation and you're running your own
when
thing.
Arizona rolled Indianapolis, you mean?
Does the assistant coach who gets a job elsewhere
yes.
have a bigger edge?
Yes, he does.
Because he's been inside both places.
Yes, he
I
does.
think so also.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Okay.
That being said, Indianapolis should not have lost that game by 29 points.
No.
By the way, both these teams rolled Indianapolis, so and I've got them. That's why I've got them higher than the Colts.
Yeah, Chuck Pagano is sticking voodoo pins in the team mascots of both teams here. But, it's really going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. So,
I think Arizona's going to win the game, but it's going to be close. Late field goal.
They're my lock pick, my other 2 picks for the week, and I'm able to focus in on my sheet here, as I say at this time. Indianapolis and Kansas City, both teams on the road. You, Kyle, are going with, as I'm looking at this here, Carolina, San Diego, and the Bears.
Yep.
So it will be very, very interesting to see how this shakes out. 3 weeks after this one here to get this thing going. I actually have a chance to go above 500 for the year on all of the picks.
Me too.
I can't believe picking every game, I'm going to be the highest percentage of – that generally trails by a long shot my big three, and my locks. But my big three is worse than picking all of the games, and my locks are worse than that.
We need to change the format of this program.
We really do. 92 losses, 91 covers here on this. I can't believe I'm doing better on it. It's just been a weird year in the NFL.
It really has been, but I'm telling you, the last couple of weeks have shown I think we've got a grip on it.
Yes.
We're going to have a strong finish to the regular season. I hope next week's lines are better than these because this was a tough one, Ricky. But as always, the pleasure was all mine.
Yes, I appreciate that. And we'll catch you again next week, everybody. Thanks very much.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and the Periodic Table of Elements.